The lighthouse lantern he swore was decommissioned. The calendar square arrived at 6:03 p.m., neat as a tide chart. Harbor Conservancy dinner, Point Argyle, late. 2 minutes later, Finn texted, "Don't wait up. Keepers Guild asked me to peek at the lantern upgrades after. Proud of me." Read he spends the heart when the rest of the sentence wants diplomatic immunity. I turned the chowder down to the kind of simmer that calls itself maturity and looked across the water. The old lighthouse stood on its rock like a throat clearing, the new glass visitor center clinging to its base in a way that suggested rich people had learned the word heritage. The square on my phone pulsed once and then behaved. I rinsed an already clean spoon because sometimes the only honest verb available is unnecessary. At 6:27, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize and a message that recognized me anyway. If dinner in the visitor hall, why did he just badge the service stair to the lantern room? North door by the fog signal shed. Lock sulks, lift, then push. I can stall the sweep 2 minutes. Signed with a single letter, S, as if the alphabet had leaned on a railing and promised not to look surprised. Sawyer runs nights at Point Argyle the way good drummers run a song, counting without asking to be thanked. He and Finn trade competence in a dialect of storms and donors. He and I have shared 2 cigarettes beside the foghorn trumpet and one laugh so sharp a gull looked offended. We have not touched. I remember not touching more clearly than some men remember vows. "Why tell me?" I wrote. "Because your calendar is polite and my key logs aren't," he sent back. Because he looked up before he swiped. People only look up on that stair when they want oxygen. Because decommissioned is keep out the way champagne is hydration. The north door sat under the eave like a secret convinced it was right. Lift, then push, and the lock remembered what work is. The service stair spiraled up inside the stone, steps narrow as bad ideas. At the watch room landing, the door breathed the salt out of its hinges. The lantern room above was a glass crown of careful light. The Fresnel lens towered like a cathedral idea somebody had translated into prisms. The keeper's deck circled it like a promise. Finn stood by the brass handrail with his jacket off, and his shirt open, one button past credible, tie folded into his pocket like a confession. Opposite him, 2 fingers resting on the lamp pedestal as if the sea itself were described in his contracts, was Alder Wynne, developer, conservancy vice chair, a roomer with berth space and an opinion about everything reflective. Alder's hand hovered near Finn's wrist without landing, because proximity photograph better than contact when your brand buys history and invoices discretion. "Decommissioned is busy," I said from the hatch. Finn turned. For a beat the truth used his face like a window the weather hadn't learned yet. Then the public version of him arrived with its practiced lighting. "Rhett," he said, how did?" "Sawyer likes nouns," I said. "I like doors." Alder smiled in the language of wealthy benevolence. "We were inspecting optics," he said. "The public loves the feeling of stewardship." "I prefer stewardship that doesn't require a lens to keep secrets," I said. Finn took 1 step toward me and let the deck take the second. "We were reviewing the new LED arrays," he said. He wanted to see how the catwalk handles vibration. "Up close is persuasive," Alder said. He lifted his palms, 2 immaculate parentheses. 2 minutes. The tide is punctual and so am I. He drifted to the far pane where the sea leaned its shoulder against the glass like an animal that could afford patience. As he passed, 2 fingers touched Finn's shoulder, punctuation, not possession. The prisms kept their opinions to themselves. Finn watched me the way men watch weather when they hope it will finally choose to be on their side. "I was going to text you," he said, lower now. using the register he keeps for mornings and the soft under my jaw. After, I wanted to know I could leave this room without it telling me what that meant. You wanted to be caught, I said. Not punished, caught. He let a breath out, and the lens threw it back as a rumor of light. Yes. There is a temperature at which grammar retires. I crossed the narrow deck and put my mouth on his because steel and glass deserve honesty now and then. He kissed back with the relief of a man who has been paying interest on restraint, compounded nightly by weather. He tasted like donor bourbon and salt. My thumb found the hinge of his jaw and pressed. He made the small, involuntary sound I keep receipts for. His palm slid under my shirt and settled flat between my shoulder blades like a promise that can't be notarized. We didn't undress. The lens charges extra and cameras enjoy learning. He broke the kiss first because he knows the exact second heat applies for narrative. He rested his forehead against mine. Somewhere below, the foghorn cleared its throat as if it had seen this kind of thing before. I didn't kiss him, he said. I wanted to want to. I texted Sawyer instead. You did, I said. He prefers oxygen to salvage. Alder tilted his head with the tidy curiosity of men who assume horizons acknowledge them. He didn't come closer. Waves performed their contract with the rock. The light stayed dark, a promise not yet sold. Come home, Finn said. After I thank the man who trusts keys, I said. Sawyer waited in the watchroom with a lanyard looped over 2 fingers and the sort of calm that convinces gulls to sit out a storm. He didn't smile. He also didn't make mercy expensive. Night sweep climbs in 90, he said. If you don't want to walk your explanations past a docent who recognizes breath, take the exterior stair, down to the oil room, out by the boathouse gate. The yard cam believes every coil of rope is a coil of rope. You sent the message, I said. I opened a door, he said. You two remembered how to climb. We took the iron stairs that wrap outside the tower like a decision you can't take back. The oil room smelled like history that had decided to be professional. The boathouse gate didn't squeal because Sawyer had decided long ago it wouldn't. We walked home along the harbor road so the visitor center couldn't assign us a caption. In the kitchen, the chowder forgave me for assuming it would wait. We ate standing, like mammals who know where the bowls live. He told me Alder had been sculpting a compliment into a proposition for weeks, and he had helped because selection feels like love when usefulness has emptied your pockets. I told him Sawyer had texted because some men choose air over alibi. He didn't ask whether Sawyer and I had ever been unprofessional together. I didn't say how sodium lights turned Sawyer's mouth into punctuation that makes sense in storms. Later in bed, we left a sliver of cool like a reservation and then let it surrender because the night had already billed us for restraint. He kissed me with the steadiness I trust more than policy. I put my mouth where his jaw goes humble and told it a morning. It was heat without theater. The house minded its radiators. Out on the point, the lighthouse kept its breath and politely forgot our names. He fell asleep with his hand on my wrist, not as proof, not as claim, just counting the animal we've decided to keep. Morning behaved. Coffee made its case. Sunlight laid honest rectangles on the table. The calendar square for tonight stayed blank, which in this town is the kink we can afford. Finn tied a tie over a throat I intend to retire with patience and kissed me like the door already knew our names. He left to persuade a breakfast that stable isn't a synonym for still. At 9:14, a text arrived from a number saved as one letter. No lantern cam saw anything but prisms. I looped a maintenance focus check for 20. Consider it training. I sent, you're very proud of your training. He replied, I'm proud of your exit. No punctuation correct. By noon, a culture blog posted a photo of Alder on the visitor center deck with a caption about stewardship and wonder. I scrolled past. It wasn't our room. At 1:29, Finn texted a picture of our kitchen table with the plant we keep refusing to let die basking in a reasonable square of sun. Room exists, he wrote. The week pretended to behave like a buoy, upright, unbothered, lying by omission. Alder sent a revised pledge with fewer adjectives and more commas. Finn read to the part where the commas began to behave like a harness and set it face down. He pressed his forehead against my temple for a quiet count of 7 and let air return to its job. 2 nights later, the Conservancy hosted Keeper for a night. Honest tickets, real families, kids learning that the sea expects manners. We went together, because sometimes the correct grammar is plural. Sawyer nodded once from the oil room door like an usher who had already chosen a side. Alder shook Finn's hand while a photographer taught a brass plaque to glow. A reporter asked about legacy. Finn pointed to a volunteer kneeling to show a child how to polish a lens prism and said, "Legacy is what keeps rooms gentle." And the reporter wrote it down like she'd earned a truth. On the way home, the wind rehearsed indifference along the breakwater. Finn slid 2 fingers into my back pocket in the way that says not mine but here, and the night respected us enough to look away. We scorched the toast and ate it anyway. At the bedroom door, he kissed me the way good sentences land, without ornament, unavoidable. I answered as if verbs were the last honest currency. It did not stay tidy. It never does here. An anonymous account posted a grainy still of 2 silhouettes in a lantern's dark glass, one hand too near to be polite. The caption invented entanglement, the comments rented outrage and charged by the breath. I put my phone down next to the plant and watched the plant win. Finn texted me a different image. The lantern room at noon, Sawyer showing a grad student how to level a lens element while a hygrometer confessed contentment. "Our version works for a living," he wrote. On Sunday, Sawyer texted, "Points quiet. Want to sit where nobody sells you a seat?" We went. He handed us paper cups of coffee that tasted like competence and showed us which panes lie when the wind shifts, why you never trust a door that apologizes, and how to hear the faint complaint of a gear about to ask for help. He didn't flirt with anything, not even the truth. He stood with his hands in his jacket pockets and told us a joke about rich men who think horizons are metaphors. I liked him better for refusing to be necessary when he didn't have to be. The following week, the Conservancy staged a press event to announce Lighthouse Community Hours. Finn spoke first, about bolts and volunteers and the joy of maintenance, the only speech that ages correctly. Alder promised to help the city meet its water on time, a sentence that managed to spend nothing and still draw applause. After, he shook Finn's hand and then looked at me with the careful respect of a man evaluating whether he cannot purchase. "You're both very good at exits," he said. "Practice," I said. He laughed because it was the only honest thing left on his card. A columnist with a talent for adjectives suggested Finn's access ode to private tour. The piece included a photo of glass that could have been any glass and a paragraph that could have been any rumor. The comments did their choreography. I took the plant to the sink and let water speak to its roots like a promise we could afford. That night, we turned our phones face down and cooked like people who still believe heat tells the truth. Rain arrived midweek and stayed like a relative with stories. On a wet Thursday, Sawyer sent a single word, weather, and we met him by the fog signal shed where the gutter negotiated with the downpour. He showed us which drain floods first, where to stand when lightning auditions against a lightning rod, and why latches that apologize don't deserve to keep their jobs. He didn't ask about the photo. We didn't say his name out loud. 3 people wide under a corrugated breath. We let the storm edit sentences we didn't need. Life kept not being simple. Alder kept sending commas that wanted homes. Finn kept returning them with better ones. The plant kept inventing a shade of green that made vanity look domestic. We kept our calendar squares blank on purpose because blanks are the only promises rooms respect. Sometimes, close to midnight, we walk the seawall and look out at Point Argyle. Through the visitor center glass you can't see the lantern, only displays practicing conversation and a gift shop rehearsing desire. That's as it should be. We circle the block of ocean and go home without letting the building perform at us. He takes my wrist like a man reteaching himself the grammar of doors. I think about the lantern and the 2 minutes that were enough, about how some rooms try to own you and others teach you to leave correctly. Sometimes I think about Alder paused in the reflected dark like a man who wants to buy air and discovering it doesn't invoice. Sometimes I think about Sawyer's line, "I opened a door," and how it's the only biography I want for this version of us. Tonight's square is empty. We're leaving it that way. Let the lighthouse keep its speeches and the city its applause. We have the boathouse gate, a plant we refuse to let die, and the quiet grammar of a decision that knows where it belongs. Not in the rumor, not in the photo, but in the mouth that learned to say come home and mean it. If we get caught again, let it be by each other. The rest of the world can rehearse stewardship. We'll be in the room that doesn't need it, counting breaths until they sound like tide, and calling that enough.